Good afternoon, everyone. This is Shantanu Chakraborty. I am assistant professor in the Department of Data Science. Today, I'll be explaining you about the looping and branching statement that we use in R programming. There are a lot of looping and branching construct that we use in R programming language, which makes it very structured and modular programming language. So let us first start with an introduction to if-else statement, switch statement, which are the control the flow of in a program. So basically, the if-else and switch statement control the sequence of execution of the instruction in a program. R is implemented using these conditional statement. So first is basically the if condition statement. So if the condition is evaluated, if the condition is true, the program will evaluate the statement that is present in the true block. But if the condition is false, the control will go to the false block and it will execute the statement that are provided in the false block. So this is how the syntax of if-else statement works in R programming. This is a small snippet of example how if-else statement is written in a standard R program. So here we have taken a variable x, which is assigned a value 10. Then we are checking if the value of x is greater than 5, then it will print the x is greater than 5. If it is not, then it is going to print the x is less than 5. Now, this is another example of if-else statement that we use in R programming. Here we take age as a variable and we input the value of age from the user. If the age exceeds 18, then it print that you are an adult, else it will print that you are a minor. We also use a nested if-else statement in R programming. So in a nested if-else statement, there is a one outer if statement and there is one inner if statement. So if outer if statement is true, the control will go and evaluate the inner if statement. And if inner if statement is true, the control will go to the true block, else the control will go to the false block and execute the statement in the respective blocks. R's programming language also provide if-else statement, which has got the else part. So if the if condition is true, the control will execute the statement in the true block. If the if statement is false, the control will go to the false block and it will evaluate the statement that are present in the false block. There is a switch statement that we use for flow control mechanism in R programming. So we enter the choice and whatever is the choice of the day, that day or that command is printed. For example, here the day is Monday. So it will print start of the week. If the day is assigned to Friday, it will print almost the weekend. If the day is assigned Sunday, it will print weekend. So this is how a switch statement works in R programming. Then we have break and next statement. The break statement will exit the loop. Basically, the break statement will take the control outside the loop. So that is what a break statement does, is exit the loop and then it continues the iteration with the next sequence of statement in program. Then there is a for loop. The for loop is a iteration where it can print a variable or it can display a given sequence. That is what we can do with the for loop. Then there is a loop in R that repeat itself. So repeat is also a loop that we use in R and it executes indefinitely until break. So it executes while the condition is true and it iterates over a sequence one after another. There is a while loop. A while loop is the one which is an entry control loop we use in R programming. Here, while the condition is checked first, if the condition is true, the code is executed in the true block. If the condition is false, the control will go outside the loop. And within the body of the loop counter variable is incremented by 1. Then we have a for loop. We have a for loop in R, which is used for iteration. So if we iterate from 1 to 10, if we write for I in 1 colon 10, it will display the number in the range from 1 to 10. Repeat loop is also the one that we use, which repeats the sequence of instruction in a program. And if the condition fails, it will break and come outside the loop. This is how a break statement works within a loop. So the loop here is iterating from 1 to 10. If the value of loop counter variable I, if it becomes equal to 6, it will break and it will take the control outside the loop. So this is how a break statement works within the for loop. Then we have the next statement, which is used to skip the current iteration and move to the next statement in sequence. So whenever it encounters the next statement, so it will skip that iteration and it will move to the next iteration. That is what the next statement does in our programming. Then we got a while loop. So while loop will iterate and it will display the number from 1 to 5. So that is what a while loop does within the R programming language. These are some of the programs where we do a hands-on in RStudio and we'll check how the if else statement or how the for loop, while loop, or repeat loop is working and how the switch statement works in a R programming language. So we'll proceed. Let us perform some basic hands-on example on looping and branching statement in R programming. Suppose we do a small program which we write with if-else statement. So if we input a number and if that number is divisible by 2, the program will display that the number is an even number. Otherwise, it will display the number is an odd number. So let us proceed and find out what exactly the logic or the code that goes behind this. Suppose you take a number here in RStudio and you provide a user input. How do we give a user input in R? Suppose we write as dot integer and then we write read line followed by the prompt which tells us enter any number of your choice. So once you have entered this number, it will ask for integer input. So suppose you have taken a number 22. Now, if this number is divisible by 2, it will display the number is even. If this number is not divisible by 2, it will display the number is odd. So, we are going to use a if statement. So, if condition, suppose if the number n mod 2 gives us the remainder 0, then we are going to go to the print statement and we're going to print the number is even. So how do we print it? Print, then we write or display the number is even. If this condition fails, then we go to the else part and we'll write the number is odd. We'll write print the number is odd. So we are displaying whether the number is even or the number is odd. So in this case, we entered a number that is 22. So 22 number is divisible by 2. So it displays in the output the logic that the number is even. Similarly, suppose if you want to input any three numbers and you wish to display which is the largest of three numbers, then we can use if-else statement, which will allow us to display which is the largest of three numbers. So let us take three number. We take the first number as dot integer and then we write read line and we write prompt and we write enter the first number. Enter the first number. So once you've entered the first number, then you go and enter the second number. Suppose the first number you entered 12. Now you take another number that you take as an input, and then you write as dot integer, and then you write read line, and then you provide a prompt statement. So prompt statement will allow you to provide that prompt, enter the second number. So after the first number, we are entering the second number randomly, which is the user input. And then you can enter the third number. So the second number, you have to enter it like this with the arrow symbol. So once you enter the second number, then you can go and enter the third number. So suppose you have entered the second number is 88. Now we'll go and we'll enter the third number from here, which will be a user input. Enter the third number. So what we wish to do is that we wish to find out if randomly three numbers are entered, we'll be getting the largest of the three numbers. So we have to generate a logic or a code such that we get the largest of three numbers. So first, we have to compare the first number with the second number. If the first number is greater than the second number, and if the first number is greater than the third number, then the first number is largest. Else, we'll compare whether the second number is greater than the third number. If that is the case, we'll print the second number is largest. But if suppose that condition also fails, then we'll go to the third part and we'll print the third number is largest. So we'll go one by one. So we write if the first number, that is A, is greater than the second number B, and the second number B is also greater, A is also greater than C. So if A is greater than B and if A is greater than C, then the first number A is the largest number. So we'll display print the first number, the first number is the largest. Else, if this condition fails, then we go to the else part and we write else if, and we check if the second number is greater than the third number, then we'll write the second number is greater than is the largest. That means B is largest. So we'll display here print B, that is the second number, is largest. So we are displaying here the second number B is largest. Suppose if this conditions fails, then we can come to the else part here in the RStudio. We can come to the else part and we can display or we can print the largest number is C. So once we display the largest number is C, so what happens in this case, the first number is 12, the second number is 56, the third number is 88. So in RStudio, it will show the largest number is 789, which is C in this case. This is only possible if you're using the if-else statement within the RStudio. So within R programming language, the if-else statement construct provides us with the capability of checking one condition within the other one till we get the correct block, right? Now we consider a scenario. Suppose you have to write a program in R where we will be displaying the mark sheet of a student. That means you'll enter the student name, the roll number, and then you'll enter the marks in subject 1, subject 2, subject 3, and then you calculate the total marks, and you calculate the average marks, and then you check whether the average marks is greater than 90 or 80 or 70. Depending on that, you display the grade of a student. So let us work on that area. So first, what we need to do, we need to input the name of a student, or you can take a variable name where you can write as dot int. Only just read line, and then you can write prompt, and within prompt you can write enter the name, enter student name. So once you have entered the name of the student, suppose you have entered the name of the student as Akash. Then you enter the roll number of the student. So you enter the roll number of the student. Now you can use a read line, and you can use a prompt where you can write enter roll number of the student, right? So suppose you entered the roll number 123. So first you enter the name of the student, second you enter the roll number of the student, and then you enter the marks of the student in 3 respective subjects, that is the subject 1, subject 2, and subject 3. And then what we are going to do is that we are going to calculate the total marks and the average marks of the student. So what we do, we basically calculate the total and average marks. So we write subject 1, and then we write enter the marks in subject 1. So we'll write as dot integer read line. We'll write here enter the marks in subject 1. So we'll write prompt, and we'll write equal to enter the marks in subject 1. Then we will be entering the marks in the second subject also. Suppose we entered the marks in first subject out of 100, the student scored 78. Then you repeat the same statement, but that will be for the subject 2. So we'll write subject 2, enter the marks of the student for subject 2, right? So once we entered this prompt, then we are going to enter the marks, suppose 89. Then we write subject 3, and we write enter the marks of student for subject 3. So instead of subject 2, we'll put it here subject 3, where we'll input the marks of the student for third subject respectively. Suppose the student scores 90 in the subject 3. Now we'll calculate the total marks of the student, which is the sum of the marks in subject 1 plus subject 2 plus subject 3. So we'll get the total marks here. So you can print the total marks. So you'll display the total marks. Now, if you wish to get the average marks, the student scored out of 300, you need to calculate the average marks, which is total divided by 3, which gives you the average marks. And then you can print the average marks scored by the student. Now, based on the average marks, you want to calculate what will be the grade that will be assigned to the student based on the total marks and the average marks. So we can use if-else condition repeatedly to check the grade scored by the student. So how we can use if-else condition? We'll write if average marks of the student is greater than 90, then we'll print the grade is A plus. We'll print the grade is A. Okay. And then we close it. But suppose if this condition fails, then we have to go to the else part, and we have to check if the average marks of the student is greater than 80. If the average marks of the student is greater than 80, then what we are going to execute, what we are going to display. If the average marks of the student is greater than 80, then we'll display or we'll print the grade of the student is B. The grade of the student, the grade is B. Suppose if this condition also fails, then we have to go again to the else if part of this statement where we write else if the average marks of the student is greater than 70, and then we'll display the grade based on the average marks, right? So if it is greater than 70, we'll go to the next line and we'll print the grade of the student. The grade is C. Suppose if this condition also fails, then we go to the else part of this. Else if, and will be using else if, and then we'll check the condition. If the average marks is greater than 60. If the average marks is greater than 60, we'll print the grade is D. Print the grade is D. Else, we'll print the grade is fail. So else we come to the else part of this. If this condition fails, where we write print the grade is fail. So we are repeatedly using the if else condition to check the grade of a student. So if the condition is true, it will go to the true block, it'll execute the true block and it come out of that. If the condition is false, it'll go to the false block and it'll stop the iteration there itself, right? So here it shows the grade is B as the average marks here calculated for a student exceeds 80. So here the student average marks is 85.66. That shows that the grade scored by the student is B. So next the next hands-on that we are going to do in RStudio is about using the switch statement. How we can use the switch statement and provide the choice that is required to display the result. So for switch statement, the choice that we enter needs to be evaluated. That provides us with the given output. So let us do the switch statement. You must have used a switch case statement in R or C programming language. So we use switch statement in R programming also. So for that, suppose you take a variable choice and the variable choice will be the user input. You can take any input as a choice. Read line, enter your choice. For instance, suppose you have entered your choice as 2. So suppose your choice which you have entered is 2. So what happens here? It will take the input as choice. Then you assign a variable result, and under the variable result, you use the switch statement and where you write choice and you provide your choice as Monday. If it is 1, it will be Monday. If your choice is 2, then it will display Tuesday. If your choice is 3, it will display Wednesday. If your choice is 4, it will display Thursday. If your choice is 5, it will display Friday. Or if it is 6, it will display Saturday. and then you execute the instruction. So you can print the result. So result will display the second option, that is Tuesday, because here your choice is 2. So in case if your choice is 3, it would have displayed Wednesday. If your choice is 4, it would have displayed Thursday. If your choice is 5, it would have displayed Friday. If your choice is 6, it would have displayed Saturday, and so on. So this is how a switch statement works in R programming. Now, basically, we are also going to look into the iterations or the looping part, because R is a programming language and it helps us to perform certain iterations or loops on the given variable. So first loop that we use in R is basically a for loop. Then we'll do with the while loop, and then we'll do with the repeat loop. So all the loop one by one, we'll see an example how it works or operate. So let us clear the screen. Suppose if we want to use a for loop in R programming and we want to display number in the range 1 to 10. So what is the logic that we need to use? Suppose you define a variable I as 1 and you need to use a for loop. A for loop which will iterate 10 times. That means for I in 1 colon 10. So you write for I in 1 colon 10. So this is the syntax you give for the for loop. Now you display the value of I. You write print I. So once you write print I, it will print the value of I within the loop, and you'll get the output like this 1 to 10. So this is a for loop that we can use in our programming language. And this is the syntax that we can use for displaying the numbers between the range 1 to 10 in a for loop. We can also use a while loop. So while loop is also used for iteration, and the while loop that we can use is also can display number within a given range. For example, if you want to display the numbers between 1 to 20, so you can take a loop counter variable, suppose j, assign it a value as 1, and then you write while the value of j is less than or equal to 20. So the while loop is going to iterate 20 times and it's going to print the value of j. So initially it will print j as 1, but then it is going to increment the value of j by 1. So we'll write j assigned to j plus 1. So once that is done, we'll terminate the body of the loop and we'll come out. So you can see the output here. The while loop will display the numbers from 1 to 20. And the for loop is displaying the numbers between 1 to 10. Then there is another loop construct that we can use, which is called as a repeat. Repeat is also a looping construct, which gives us a range of number that we can print and we can come out from one starting a value to the one a terminating value, right? So we can break and we can come out of that particular iteration. So for repeat, suppose we assign a variable I as a value 1. Now within the variable I, we can write repeat. What we can write here, we can write repeat. So once we start writing repeat, we'll also use a break statement within the repeat. We'll also use a break statement within the repeat, right? So we'll print I. So we'll print I. So what we are going to do is that we are going to print the value of I. And then what we are going to do is we're going to increment. We are going to increment the value of I by 1, and but we'll keep on incrementing it till we encounter a break. So if the value of I exceeds 10, if the value of I exceeds 10, then within the if statement, we'll write break, we'll write break, and will come out of that very repeat loop, right? Will come out of that very repeat loop. So we'll come out by writing break. Else what we'll do is that we'll continue and we'll increment the value of I to I plus 1. So the loop counter variable is incremented to 1. And then we go ahead and we terminate the loop. So here the repeat loop will display number between 1 to 10. Because once it encounters or it becomes 11, it will break and come out of that particular loop construct. So this is how our for loop, while loop, and repeat looping constructs, which help us to implement iteration in our programming language. So R is very, very useful programming language, and whatever we studied today is about if else, nested if else, yeah, for loop, while loop, switch statement. All these are looping and branching constructs that we use in our programming. And what we have seen and hands-on how these looping constructs work and what type of output that they return to the calling portion of the program. So this is how the for loop, while loop, they work and they provide us with various constructs. So I hope today's lesson on looping, branching, and iteration, how this iteration takes place in our studio with hands-on has been clear. That's all for the day. Signing off. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.